I'm Dr. Mariana Martinez. Welcome to Family Matters. The idea that human beings are part of nature and our interdependence with the rest of creation is not new. What might be new to many people is the idea that the imbalance that we currently experience between humans and nature has an impact on the emotional stability of individuals and families. Dr. Daniel Papero will address this idea, which emerged as part of the last of the 8 concepts in Bowen Family Systems Theory, societal emotional process. I have asked Dr. Papero to walk us through how this idea was formulated as part of the study of families and their adaptation to an ever-changing set of conditions. For more than 30 years, Dr. Papero has been a faculty member at the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family. He has published extensively about family systems theory, family psychotherapy, and the functioning of corporations and organizations. Dr. Papero, thank you for being here today with us.
You're welcome.
So, this idea about societal regression or the family, the social emotional process, and the connection to nature was the last of the 8 concepts to be formulated. Would you tell us how this came about?
Well, my understanding of it was that in 1972, Dr. Bowen was invited to participate in a conference sponsored by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency that had something like a title, something like The Future of the World, What Can Be Expected. And he was asked to address what can one expect in human behavior as we move into the future. It may have been a bit more precise than that, but that was the idea. And from that, he formulated an idea of regression, that societies move backwards and then forwards and backwards and forwards in their functioning, in their capacity to address problems, maintain stable functioning, that sort of thing. And he gave that address and later wrote it up and published it as well. And in that address, he thought that there was a progression one could see as individuals and families and communities lost functioning capacity and became more chaotic. And then what would happen is they also then restored order. He later changed the name of that concept from societal regression to emotional process in society to reflect that both the back and forth. That's my understanding of it anyway. He thought that the backwards movement was driven by human anxiety, human fear in one way or another. And he went on to say something that I think is actually quite profound in my view. The basic source of this fear or anxiety was not so much war or something like that, or illness, but that the human was increasingly becoming disconnected from the natural world, increasingly unaware of the reciprocity between living things that supports the life of all. Something like that. And that humans were losing their knowledge of how nature worked, and consequently losing knowledge about what supported their own life and how they contributed to this web of life that we have on this planet, perhaps alone in all of the universe. And so that was what he thought.
Do you know what would be the support, like the evidence for that? I mean, it sounds like a right idea, but then how do we know that is just not a theoretical formulation, you know, an idea?
I guess, yeah. Well, I think Dr. Bowen was looking at a number of things. I suspect, although I don't know it for sure, that he was influenced a lot by people like John B. Calhoun of the National Institute of Health, looking at the effects of population density as we move forward in time. The human is experiencing continuous population growth, and we are perhaps the only species in the history of life on Earth that's been able to continue to exceed the natural constraints that stop the expansion of a species. Most species expand until natural constraints force a regression in the population, that sort of thing. So far, the human has been able to avoid this. We keep expanding.
By being able to adapt to different environments.
And bringing in different structures which allow us to continue that sort of thing. So we're perhaps as I've thought about it, I don't know that this is what Dr. Bowen was thinking about, one of the most important disconnects between the human and the rest of life is the disconnect between the processes that regulate population growth. We're now approaching, well, we're more than 7.5 billion souls on the planet. We're increasing at about 1.1% per year, which plays out to somewhere between 80 and 90 million people per year are being added to the global population. This is a slower rate of increase than it was 30 years ago, but it's still increasing. And most of that population increase is not evenly distributed across the globe. It's occurring in those areas which are the poorest, which are the most socially unstable. And so much of this is part of what contributes to the migratory processes we're seeing. That out of this booming population and the difficulty sustaining life in these complex areas, whether it's through poverty, whether it's through civil disturbance, populations are migrating. We are out of contact with the forces that move this sort of thing. Calhoun pointed out, really now 40 years ago, his view that the human has actually become the shaper of the environment rather than the environment shaping the human. And I think we begin to see signs of that, although there's great controversy politically about environmental change. It is, I think, factually clear that the global environment is changing. It's changing in ways that will challenge life as we know it currently. It may have impacts on the quality of human life. It certainly has impact on the quality of the life of other species. As the human population expands and we begin to get these changes, we now have very clear evidence, in spite of those who put their head in the sands about it, that global warming is occurring, sea levels are rising, that many areas of the globe that are currently lived in are not going to be habitable in the future. The seas are going to claim those. We're seeing changes in the atmosphere. We're seeing changes in all kinds of things to which we're not responding well.
Because it sounds like it's not only the changes in the environment per se, but the connection or our understanding of what's our place in all these that drives the anxiety. Is that?
I think that's right. We're approaching what Calhoun called the eye of the needle, somewhere in the middle of this century, where you have the intersection of rapidly or continuously increasing human population density, plus the great difficulty the human has regulating his or her own functioning, plus the effects of the various changes in the environment, which are going to hit a critical junction, according to many of these thinkers, somewhere in the middle of this century, and that life may change at that point. And one of the greatest challenges is for the human to use this big brain to think beyond the immediate, to begin to try to think about the longer term consequences of certain sorts of activities. There are certain things that happen in the world, in nature, and one of them is what's called an ecological trap. And an ecological trap is one in which a changing ecology, that is a changing environment, is responded to by a living organism out of its instinctive or automatic programming but that automatic programming no longer fits with the changed conditions, and the automatic programming actually makes the situation worse for that species. And the question is, are we approaching something like that for the human?
How does this imbalance translate into our lives as individuals living in families, living in groups, in social groups? How does that transfer into my life, let's put it that way, or your life, an individual level?
Well, I think it depends on how much anxiety is generated. There appear to be three basic responses that living things do to challenge. One is to attempt to become the dominant force in the environment and control everything. This is a short-term strategy that almost always leads to failure, ultimately. A second strategy is to retreat and to try to hang on to, for lack of a better word, tradition, to wall off change. And that also ultimately is ineffective. And there's a third strategy or response to challenge, which is ultimately the one that seems to be the most useful over time. Jack Calhoun calls it migration. But he's not simply talking about migrating from place to place, but migrating in thinking differently about the world, managing emotion differently, migrating into something new, approaching something new. And those individuals that migrate in that way encounter difficulty as they migrate, but in encountering the difficulty, they come up with new ways of being, which become the new norm as the adaptation goes through. That's been the process of evolution forever, and the human does it too.
And some of us are going to fall in one of those categories.
Some of us are going to fall in one of those categories. And attempting to be dominant may work for me, but the effects of that may not work for my grandchildren. In other words, the cumulative effects of that, when it's fallen apart, may make life worse for them. The same with the hanging on to tradition. So the challenge always is, as Alfred North Whitehead pointed out, that the great challenge of change is how do you preserve order in the midst of change? Because the dilemma is when chaos emerges, and chaos begins to undercut everything. So how do you preserve order in the midst of change? And that's exactly, I think, the problem that our societies face right now. We don't agree with what order is. Number one, we're polarizing with one another. We can't hit common goals. We can't see common interests. One of the problems with polarization is that people start thinking about positions rather than about interests. What is it that is in my interest long term? When people begin to think interests, they begin to have the ability to coordinate functioning, so that my long-term interest can be arrived at best when I recognize your long-term interest and we cooperate to a certain point. We collaborate in our efforts as opposed to we dig in and fight around our positions.
How, if I understand correctly, Dr. Bowen thought, or his family systems theory says, that what happens in the larger society somehow has an impact on the everyday life of people, on the family life and the way the family functions. So it's like larger groups or larger spheres impacting smaller spheres, and then from the family to the individual. What do you see as being the impact for family functioning of these disintegration with nature as we are experiencing now?
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just the increasing level of tension, anxiety, fear that's in people and families. even if the sailing is relatively smooth for them, they are aware that change is occurring, and it's, and they attempt to wall it off, or they, something like that. If you're in an affected population, of course, you have real issues to deal with. You don't have enough food, you lose your housing, you lose your work, you then have to deal with the problem of adaptation. If I've been a coal miner all my life and I'm 45 years old and I lose my job, what do I do? And we run into this challenge of how do people embrace something new and work toward it when their entire structure is oriented a different way.
But then some families seem to be more affected by that in the same circumstances than others.
Yes.
So it's not only about the reality of the challenge, but also how the family responds to it, and there's variation in that.
There is variation in that. As a family is faced with challenge, not all families start at the same starting point. I don't know whether it is consistent with Dr. Bowen's ideas or not, but I believe that family units transmit forward in time the processes they have used in the past to adapt to challenge, so that whenever a family is faced with a challenge, it has reaction processes or response processes as it engages the challenge. Mm-hmm. Some of those processes actually lead to effective and efficient adaptation. Other responses lead to ineffective things. I think challenge by challenge over time, families either move toward increasing effectiveness and efficiency in dealing with challenge or less so. And that can vary across long periods of time. But two families faced with the same challenge, if one family represents a line that has relatively effectively and efficiently adapted across time versus one that hasn't, the one that comes out of that more efficient tradition will probably do better with this one. It will have less stress, less anxiety. It will be less torn apart and chaotic in that process. It's the logic in the thing. I think we see things like that going on, which is one of the arguments for why individuals and families should at any point in time be working toward thinking about their adaptive responses to change, because it has a long-term effect, sequelae that go on. This is so clear in things like mental health, where we look at something called trauma, which is the persistence of effects following a very intense, stressful experience. And we see that not everybody is vulnerable in the same way to that. Not all families are vulnerable, and then the question is why? Well, then you look back at the history of the family, and you see that family A has a much more chaotic, much more inefficient, much more problematic process as it faces life, versus family B, which has been much more, stable, solid, much more effective and efficient. It is much more likely that an individual coming out of the chaotic environment is going to be vulnerable to traumatization versus someone who comes out of the family where things have been more effective and efficient.
So you're saying that some families are more affected than others by this lack of harmony with nature.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into a very simplistic solution to this, but is the connection with nature and the awareness of the the ways we are interconnected, is it a way to begin to backpedal that?
I think it is, but what does that mean? It could be very kooky that we should all go off and, live in the bush somewhere, It's pretty clear most of us couldn't survive if we had to do that. We have lost basic knowledge about how to survive in a less technical world. But, increasing awareness of forces at work that are changing the natural world upon which we depend is useful. The environmentalists have been arguing this for years. It gets into the polarization, but there are things all of us could do. You know, the simple ones, we could work on carbon emissions. We could begin to understand more about the role of plants in our life.
I'm thinking about the impact of the sense of agency that it has in our own functioning. So even if I'm not solving the huge, the rising of the ocean level problem, if I have a sense that I'm contributing in a small way in my own environment, that might help me maintain some
That is
stability.
the only way change is going to happen. Change like this, excuse me, begins locally. It begins individual by family within their local environment. I firmly believe this is the way substantive change occurs. It does not occur by big legislative things that partially address something. It begins when individuals take responsibility for addressing the conditions of their lives and of the relationship networks in which they participate. And that begins to spread. That is part of the essence of regression and progression, because society is not always going backwards. Elements of it are going backwards, but pockets are moving forward. And if you look at those pockets, they seem to be those areas where individuals are looking at their world, defining problems clearly, figuring out ways to work on those problems locally, and not worrying too much about the big thing. And as they begin to do that, not only are they being affected by the broader society, but their functioning has an impact on how that broader society is working.
And think about how the new generation children have some of these concepts really integrated into the way they think about the world and their impact. And I mean, when I was growing up, I wouldn't think twice if somebody threw something from the window, in the car, and just a tissue or something. That was part of what people did. And now kids look at that, and it's just, I know one of my kids, my father used to smoke, and what people did in his generation was they would smoke and then throw the used
cigarette butt down.
there.
Yep.
And one of my kids saw that and just couldn't help it but said, "Granddad, what are you doing? I mean, did you just throw that on the floor like that?" He said, "Yeah." Really, like he couldn't believe it. So it's so integrated. So at least that gives me some hope that the new generation has a different understanding of our relationship with nature. Who knows?
So much of this is in setting up basic habits and things early on in life. I think there's no other way around that. And some of that gets into the educational process more broadly in society through school systems, but a lot of it begins in how families actually are responding on a local level to the challenges they face. If one sees that something that the family or an individual is doing is contributing to a lesser quality of life, to a more chaotic situation, and that individual or that family attempts to do something about that, they are contributing to progress.
Yeah.
They are beginning to reestablish some of these bases. That's the best I can do with it. We're all vulnerable to this. We all live in this world. We act as if, we can go on forever on this planet that has limitations as far as we know. And so far, we don't know of another, certainly not one we can get to at this point. Maybe in the future we'll be able to find another planet and get there and restart life, but that's not an option right now. So we better figure out what we're doing here and not put too much into we're going to find another planet.
No place to run.
No place to run.
We need to work on this one. Thank you, Dr.
You're
Favre.
welcome. Yep.
I'd like to remind you that the Bowen Center for the Study of the Family offers the community affordable psychotherapy in both English and Spanish. If you would like more information about our topic or the services at the Bowen Center, please visit the website at www.thebowencenter.org or send me an email at familymatters at thebowencenter.org. You can find us on Facebook or call 202-965-4400. Thank you for watching, and I invite you to join me again for another edition of Family Matters. I'm Dr. Mariana Martinez, and your family does matter.